Today we're going to do geometric sequences. Yesterday we did arithmetic, and arithmetic are linear, yes? Today we're moving on to geometric. Geometric are exponential. So like I told y'all yesterday, when I teach this next year, I'm actually going to move these to those units. So like the arithmetic sequences, I'm going to move it to the linear units that we do before Christmas. And the geometric unit, the geometric sequences, I'm going to move to the exponential unit just so that it doesn't confuse anyone. And y'all remember exponential is y equals a times b raised to the power of x, yes? And so that's kind of what we're going to be looking at today. What is a geometric sequence? Well, number one, it's an exponential function. It is a list of numbers where the next term is found by multiplying the same factor to each term. They call that number that they multiply by the common ratio. So no common difference today. We're going to have a common ratio. Meaning, what are you multiplying by to get from one term to the next? It is the constant factor between the terms of a geometric sequence. Remember that you can make a table. Remember how I told you all yesterday we could make a table? You can make a table. So what is the first term here? 3. What's the second term? So I could literally make a table and say this is the first term, second term, third, fourth, fifth, and so forth. Yes? All right, to tell if something is a geometric sequence, all you're going to do is see if they have a common ratio. So when you divide this one by this one, you should get the same number across the board. So -9/3 simplifies to? So they're multiplying by -3. If this is a geometric sequence, it's going to be the same for the whole table. Well, 27/-9 is also -3, so they're multiplying by -3. I'll just do this. -81/27 is also -3, and 243/-81 is also -3. So the question is this a geometric sequence? The answer is what? Yes, and what is the common ratio? -3. Okay, look at the next one. You should be able to see this one. You shouldn't have to make the ratios, but if you need to, you would say what's 40/20? 2. So I'm multiplying by 2. What's 80/40? 2. What's 160/80? 2. And what's 320/160? 2. So is this a geometric sequence? Yes. What's the common ratio? 2. This last one, again, make a ratio. What is 4/16 simplify to? 1/4. So I multiplied by a fourth here. What is 1/4 simplify to? 1/4. Okay. What is 1/4 over 1 simplify to? A fourth. And what is 1/16 over 1/4 simplify to? A fourth. Is this a geometric sequence? Yes. What is the common ratio? A fourth. Okay, so let's look at the explicit formula. So remember, this is going to be called the explicit formula. Sometimes they'll call it the explicit equation that represents a geometric sequence. Does it kind of look like a times b raised to the power of x? A little bit, yes. All right, so I have the nth term. So that's the same thing as yesterday. That is the output, the nth term. So this number right here is the nth term, meaning the number you're looking for, also known as the output. And it is the term you're looking for. And yesterday we learned, what does a sub 1 mean? This is the first term. What is the R? The common ratio, like we just found. And this n minus 1, the n is the input, And then n minus 1 is the previous term, yes? So that's where the 1 comes from. It's the previous term. So that's the input or term number. And then once you subtract the 1, that would give you the previous term. The n is the input or term number. Once you subtract the 1, it's the previous term. So if I say the fifth term, the 5 goes in for n, and 5 minus 1 would give you 4, which 4 would be the previous term before 5. All right, the next one. Using the formula, write the equation, meaning write the explicit formula that can be used to find the nth term in the sequence. Okay, well, to write this formula, you need 2 pieces of information. You need the first term, and you need the common ratio. So all you need to do is fill in these 2 pieces to write the explicit formula. Well, we already know that the first term is, anybody? 3. Now we need to find the common ratio, which this is the same list we did up here. What was the common ratio? -3. So now that we have that, we can fill them in to this explicit formula. So to find the nth term, a sub n equals a sub 1, which is the first term, so 3, times, I just put it in parentheses, the common ratio, which is -3, raised to the n minus 1. And that's your answer. That is how you write the explicit formula. Super easy. All right, let's look at this next problem. There's 3 problems here that want you to use the same directions. It says, given the rule, so here's your rule, here's your rule, here's your rule, list the first 4 terms in the geometric sequence. So all you have to do is interpret this. Which one of these would represent the first term? So look at your formula. What of those numbers would represent the first term? The 3. So this right here is your first term. So you would say my first term is 3. What does this number represent? That's your common ratio. So this is your common ratio. So all you're going to do is take that number and you're going to multiply the term, to get to the next number. So multiply the term by 4. So you would say 3 times 4 is 12. 12 times 4 is 48. And 48 times 4 is 192. And that's how you use the formula to get the first 4 terms of the sequence. Are we good? All right, y'all try this one on your own. Use your calculator if you need to. Okay, you should have gotten 2, 1, 1/2, and 1/4. Yes? Any questions? All right, the last one, the first term is 5, so I would write 5. The second term would be found by multiplying by -5, so 5 times -5 is -25. And then I would multiply by -5 again, so -25 times -5 is 125. And then I would multiply by -5 again, and I would get -625. Notice on this one that it rotated between being a positive and a negative because the common ratio was a negative. So it's going to be a negative times a negative is a positive. Then you're going to multiply by a negative is going to give you a negative. Okay, flip to the back. Now we're going to write the equation, which is the explicit formula for the nth term in the geometric sequence. So we just did this on the front. We're going to practice it again. All right, so the first thing I need to know to write an explicit formula is the first term. The next thing I need to know is the common ratio. All right, so what is the first term in this sequence? -3. Now we need to find the common ratio by dividing, or basically making a ratio. So I would say, what is -1 over -3? 1/3. So this whole thing is going to be multiplied by 1/3. So then I write the explicit formula saying, to find the nth term, take my first term and multiply by my common ratio, which is 1/3, times n raised to the n minus 1 power. Okay, for the next one, what two things do I need to write an explicit formula? The first term and the common ratio. What is the first term of this sequence? 2. What is the common ratio? 16 over 2 is 8. So the common ratio is 8. Now, I don't have to check the whole sequence because it told me these are geometric sequences. So I don't have to go do every single one. They're going to give me 8. All right, so y'all go write the explicit equation. And let's do the last one. Again, I need a first term and a common ratio. What is the first term of the sequence? 15. The common ratio is 9 over 15, which simplifies if I divide the top and bottom by 3, that's 3/5. Do y'all agree? All right, so to find the nth term, I take the first term and multiply by 3/5 raised to the n minus 1. Questions, comments, concerns? All right, let's do 2 questions. This first one's not hard at all. The second one is kind of challenging. So the first one says the first 6 terms of a geometric sequence are shown. So here's the first 6 terms where the first term is 1/4. Okay, well that's what they showed us. Based on this sequence, write the equation that can be used to find the nth term in the sequence. Okay, well this is exactly what we've been doing. I need a first term, which is 1/4. What else do I need? A common ratio. Do I have to use the first 2 terms to make a ratio, or can I use any of them? Any of them. I'm going to do 54 over 9 and see what it simplifies to. Well, 54 divided by 9 is 6. It was just easier for me to do that because I know 54 divided by 9. Where I wouldn't have known 3/2 divided by 1/4 was 6. Make sense? Okay. So my common ratio is 6, and now I write my explicit formula to find the nth term. A sub n equals the first term, 1/4, times the common ratio, 6, raised to the n minus 1. Now this next one, like I said, is a little bit challenging, so make sure you pay attention. It's just written differently, that's all. So it says a sequence is defined by f of 1 equals -12. Okay, so what you have to understand, do y'all remember when we learned function notation? This would be f of x equals -12. So this number right here is the input, and this is the output, which we're going to go write that. So f of 1 equals -12. Write that down because we're going to write what it means. So this is the input, and the -12 means it's the output. So if the input is 1, isn't that mean that's the first term is -12? Does that make sense? So the first term is negative 12. And the reason is the input was 1. Then it gives you a function. F of n equals negative 3/4 times f of n minus 1 for each whole number n greater than 1. What are the first terms of the sequence? Guys, all you have to understand is that they're taking the first term. Let me make sure I'm explaining this right. They're taking the first term and multiplying by what? Negative 3/4. Okay? But they're showing you it in a different way. So I'm going to show y'all. To find the second term, f of 2, you would take negative 3/4 and you would multiply it by the function 2 minus 1. The second term, yes, that's your input, minus 1, because it's n minus 1 right here. So that's negative 3/4 times the function of 1. Well, what was the first function? Negative 12. So negative 3/4 times the first function, which was negative 12. So all that's saying is to multiply by negative 3/4. It's just written differently. Okay, well, what is negative 12 times negative 3/4? Negative 12 times negative 3/4, right? Guys, negative 12 times negative 3/4. A negative times a negative is a positive. So what is the second term? 9. Positive 9. So the first term is negative 12. The second term is positive 9. The next term, is it going to be positive or negative? Negative. Why? Because I'm multiplying by negative. What am I multiplying by? Negative 3/4. So 9 times negative 3/4 is negative 6.75. If you want to put it as a fraction, that's fine. And it wants the next term, so what am I going to multiply by? Negative 3/4, which is 5.0625. Some crazy decimal. So what I needed you to understand on this problem is that you interpret this as the first term is negative 12, and you interpret this that they're multiplying by negative 3/4. Make sense? Now, what if, I need y'all to listen, what if they asked you to write the equation in y equals a times b to the x power? Could you just use stat? Yes, but what would you need to make? A table. So like for this one, I would make a table. This is the first term, second term, third term, make a table, put it in stat, and use option 0. Yes? Okay, so let me get y'all your assignment.